Thank you for joining our podcast. We're looking forward to having this dialogue with you. You are a high performance leadership coach. You coach founders, startups, and also teams. I'm really looking forward to getting to know more about your journey and also get your perspective as you're going through coaching your clients, right? And we've always heard that certain entrepreneurs are dyslexic or have a form of neurodiversity. Just like to get your perspective on that as well. But to start off, it'll be great if you could give us a quick background and also share how your journey has been as a dyslexic individual.
Yeah, lovely to meet you, Kaushi. Thank you for inviting me on. Keen to talk about dyslexia, what it means, and how it may have impacted me and some of the people that I work with. So, my journey, see if I can do this succinctly and simply. I've had a fairly interesting life. When I was young, I was considered gifted in school. I was told I was very smart. I was also told I was very lazy. So the message I got was, you're really smart, but you're not applying yourself. You're lazy. I really struggled with homework. I just didn't know how to do it, and that made it difficult for me to do. So eventually, I actually got asked to leave school before I got to college. So in the UK, you are required to go to school until you're 16. Then A levels are optional. That's 17 to 18, and they are the entrance pathway to university. I was halfway through my A levels. I was doing maths, physics, chemistry, and further maths, be called advanced calculus in the US. And I went from being the top in my year in all of those subjects to almost the bottom by the end of the year, because the learning structure just really didn't suit me. And I didn't know that at the time. Now looking back, obviously I realize it. At the time, I didn't know. How I learn best is I need to stop and ask a lot of questions. And if I get stuck and I don't understand something, I just get stuck there and I can't move on. So I left. I was also doing high level sport at the same time. So I was competing, doing part-time jobs to fund my athletic career. I realized I wasn't quite good enough to make the Olympics. I was good, kind of low international level, but I wasn't going to go and win at Olympics, which back in those days in the UK meant I couldn't have a career. So I did what a lot of smart people do that have no formal education and became a salesman. So I worked in real estate for a large corporate company. And then after 5 years and lots of promotions, I ended up opening my own real estate company. I thought, why am I doing this to make a lot of money for somebody else? Might as well make it for me. Had that for 5 or 6 years, and then I sold that December 2007, just a month before the property crash happened in the UK in January 2008. Partly luck, partly I could see what's happening. Mainly, I didn't enjoy it. It just wasn't fulfilling to me. The pursuit of money for the pursuit of money wasn't fulfilling enough. Um, then I moved back into cycling and became a professional cycling coach. Kind of reignited my own career, started competing at high level again, won a few championships, did that for 15 years, ended up being a national team coach for USA Cycling when I moved here to California. And then COVID came. The coaching programs all got closed down. I still had my own private coaching business. And I sat there thinking, is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And realized it wasn't. While I loved it, I was only working with a small group of people at one time, and I wanted to have more impact in the world. And I was trying to figure out how that would be. I was listening to a podcast, heard a leadership coach on the podcast, sent it to my wife. And I said, "What do you think about me doing this?" At the same time, we were watching a TV show called Billions that has a leadership coach on it, Wendy Rhodes. And my wife had already said to me when we were watching the show, "I think this is what you should be doing." So, in the middle of COVID, we opened two new businesses. We opened a private therapy practice. My wife is a psychotherapist, and we opened my coaching consultancy business. And it's the best thing I've ever done. I love it. It's what I'm born to do. All of the other things I've done in my life have kind of built the skill set I needed for this. Obviously, I've done a lot of training as well. Um, and it's absolutely what I should be doing. And I love it. And I feel very grateful to be doing it.
Good. good background, and I could relate to some of the things that you said. Growing up, I had similar challenges. I was called lazy. Well, when I looked at myself and what I was capable of doing, I'm like, no, there's something here. It's just I just couldn't line it up, right? I just didn't know what was happening. And I studied in Sri Lanka. I did my undergrad, so I'm familiar with the O levels and A levels. I did my O levels, got into college here without doing the A levels. So I like there's something here. I'm capable, but it's just I couldn't make the connection. So you just going back, taking a step back, going early on in your journey. You mentioned that your grades were good, and then kind of it fell down. Was there any particular tipping point there that caused that? If you could just expand on that, right? What
Yeah.
caused that, and is there any correlation to dyslexia at that point, just looking back from now?
So when I did my GCSEs, so the exams you do when you're 16 in the UK, I was targeted to get five A's and I got five C's because the GCSE I was in the second year of GCSEs. O levels, the type of exam that came before that was just a year-end exam. If we'd done O levels, I would have got A's in most of my subjects. However, the GCSE had a large coursework, homework component to it. I didn't know how to do it. And I just really didn't get any support. So I'm old enough, I'm 51 now. I'm old enough that at that time, people didn't really understand what dyslexia was. And there was no testing in the schools that I was in, there was no appreciation of it. And this is why I got this moniker of lazy. So, it would always be you're really gifted, but you're lazy. And anybody that knows me now, I don't think they would understand that term because I am absolutely not lazy. And you don't become an elite cyclist or an elite coach or an elite entrepreneur being lazy. That's not how this game works. However, that had a lasting effect on me. I have a bit of a wound about thinking that I'm lazy, and I'm afraid of being judged of being lazy. And I definitely put a lot of pressure on myself that when I should be relaxing, I have to remind myself that it's okay to relax and I don't have to be working flat out the whole time. And I've deliberately created my life to do that. I was working 7 days a week as a cycling coach. Now I work 4.5 days a week. And I know the value of being able to recharge because what I do is quite taxing. It's sitting with people, doing deep coaching work. It's quite emotionally taxing. So I need that time to recharge. Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that I was dyslexic. I knew I was different. And various times in my careers, colleagues have said, there's something a bit different about you. Maybe you're dyslexic. I've never been able to spell anything to the point that even spell check couldn't get it. So the invention of Siri or speaking to dictation has really helped me a lot. I often have to say words to Siri to get the spelling because my initial attempts of spelling are so bad, spell check or Grammarly can't actually understand what I'm trying to say.
Yep.
So I knew there was something going on, but I didn't know what. And what put me off getting tested sooner than I did, I think, was this worry that I wasn't smart. It was this worry that it's not that there's something different about me. It's just that I'm not smart. I'm stupid. And that was a blow. That would have been a blow to my ego, as I like to think of myself as smart. So I think that put me off from getting tested for quite a long time. And it was when I started this leadership emotional coaching journey that I thought it's really time. I need to know. Got evaluated and was evaluated to be severely dyslexic. So out of the 6 general types of dyslexia, I have 5 of them and 4 of them severely. Such an interesting process because I did some of the tests and I showed my wife and we were going through the questions and I was like, I thought this was just normal, this answer. And she's like, no, that's not how my brain works. That's not how I think. So if you don't know, it's hard to know what you don't know. And I didn't know that the way that my brain behaved was different. I just thought I struggled with English and spelling. And obviously, it's a
I
lot more than that when you go deeply
Yeah,
into it, but that was the initial kind of surface presentations.
I could relate to all what you're saying. It's just I early on in even in my career now, right? It was the stigma and also not having the courage to be upfront about it. But
Yeah.
like there was something there. But then, there was things that I was good at. I was always able to think outside the box, or when a certain situation is happening, I've already been a few steps ahead while in the meetings or whatever it might be, right? And the other part, spelling, it's been an incredible invention with this autocorrect or like speech to text. It has been amazing because actually taking a step back, the reason I called it Lexic Minds, someone asked me today in another podcast I did, it's because I cannot spell dyslexia. I thought dyslexic. So it was easy for me to like Lexic Minds. So
Yep.
that's why it starts, right?
Yeah.
So certainly could relate to that. So fast forward, so you got tested based on what you said. The timeline is during around COVID time frame, right? When you started
Yeah.
the performance. Yeah.
I was at my in-laws and they were having a passionate debate that I didn't want to join in on. So I went to the lounge and I was just sitting playing around on my laptop. And I thought a lot of people have recently been mentioning that I may be neurodiverse. And my wife's therapist had suggested to her that I might have some neurodiversity from the conversations that they'd had. And I thought, I'm going to look this up and I'm going to investigate it. Took an online test, came back strongly dyslexic. Took another online test, came back strongly dyslexic. Took two more. Each time I was scoring almost the full amount for dyslexia. So saw a dyslexia therapist, had some more evaluations again, came back strongly dyslexic. And it was interesting how it played out. Things that I didn't really notice I did, like I miss a lot of filler words. So I started using Grammarly, and the difference in my sentence construction was fascinating. Just the, and I would miss those from sentences. And it's kind of surprising that people hadn't really reflected that to me. However, when I read these sentences back, I was like, oh, that makes more sense. That's easier for other people to understand too. I could understand it without the filler words, but they would sometimes get lost. So I could see an immediate impact, as you say, from these tools that we have available to us. And it helps me look, sound, and be a lot more professional, which especially is useful in the American market. The British market has a lot more colloquialisms. The general nature of speaking is a bit different there, both verbally and in writing. And in America, it's a much more neutral tone, much less colloquialisms, sayings, catchphrases. So having a tool like Grammarly that I can use that gives me suggestions on way to words things, that picks up on the words that I miss, makes my job so much easier, makes my communication so much easier. It also makes it much easier for me to talk about what I do on social media. How coaches get clients is mainly word of mouth. So most of my clients are recommendations. However, people want to check that you're legit and you're authentic, and they want to go to your website and they want to go to your social media and read articles from you, listen to podcasts from you. And having that ability to kind of upscale my grammar and my written English has been very helpful to me. Little funny story that goes with that. I tried to be a helicopter pilot in the Royal Navy. To be in the Royal Navy or to be a pilot in the Royal Navy, you have to be an officer. So it's a week-long evaluation. So I went on this course, did the evaluation, bunch of testing, leadership skills, communication skills, academic skills. Two things came out of it. One, they said I would need to take remedial English because my English was so bad compared to the standard they had. Obviously didn't figure out I had dyslexia. And two, amusingly, the last thing they tested was my eyesight, and my eyesight isn't good enough. So my right eye's perfect, but my left eye is not. So I wouldn't have been able to fly helicopters in the dark. So I didn't pass. I passed everything else though. But just amusing that, I could get to that level, and it's a very high level. There was 9 of us tested at the same time. I was the only one of the 9 that passed all of the tests bar the medical. And yeah, I was told I would need remedial lessons in English.
Wow. That that is something. So now you're at a stage, right? So kind of going back a little bit, you got your assessment, you got the results. Just curious, how was that feeling? Was it something that was validating that you always had? And then part two of the question would be, what what changed after that, right? In terms of how you approached your work or general navigating life, what has changed?
Great questions. It was very validating. And what was particularly validating was the severity of my dyslexia. So I thought, oh, maybe I've got a little mild case of dyslexia or just a little something going on. The severity of it. And then when I realized all the different ways it was impacting me. So another example is I cannot remember names. And not only can I not remember names, I find it very difficult to pronounce names, which is why off air I said to you, is this how you pronounce your name? So I have friends that after years, I still struggle to pronounce their name. Now, I used to be very embarrassed about that. I used to be ashamed of that. Now I just say, look, I'm strongly dyslexic. I may have a problem pronouncing your name. If I get it wrong, or if I ask you how to pronounce it multiple times until it sinks in, don't be offended. That's just the way that my brain works. So it gives me that language and it gives me that confidence to say, here, my brain works a little bit differently. And part of that little bit differently is names are very difficult for me. I had a colleague that I worked with who said her name differently from how it was spelled. Every time I saw her, I would have to practice saying her name in my head first before I said it, because I would want to default to how I thought it should be pronounced. I noticed as well that when I learned, so, part of my new journey with coaching, or the beginning of it, obviously I'm more established now, but part of the beginning journey of this new coaching was doing lots of learning. And I noticed how difficult it was for me to absorb information from books. I'd have to keep reading and reading, especially with words that I didn't know. I'd had to look up because I'd look the word up, then I'd forget the meaning of the word. Then I'd read it again, look the word up, forget the meaning of the word. And this used to play out for me as a sports coach. So part of what I was doing is obviously understanding high level human performance physiology. And I would really struggle to read university studies. And I didn't understand why. I've got the intellect to understand the study. I just couldn't read it and absorb the information. And one of the workarounds that I got was I befriended a college professor, and I would send studies to him and I would say, can you explain this study to me, please? And we'd jump on the phone, have a conversation about the study. He would explain the study to me. And it really befuddled him because he would say to me, I don't understand it, Lee. You understand this at a higher level than my graduate students, yet you can't read this study. Like how, once I'd been diagnosed with dyslexia and went back and explained it to him, he was light bulb moment. Oh, I get it. And it also made him, I don't know if kind is the right word, but it made him understand why I needed him to do this for me. And he didn't kind of judge me as being lesser or dumb. He was like, oh, okay. And it helped him understand kind of his purpose in that process for me. And it helped me understand his purpose. And I could be very thankful about what he was helping me with. And we've ended up being great friends.
No, that is excellent and very generous of him to spend the time, do
Very.
that. Yeah, because that's like it's your other version of read out loud, right? It's someone who's able to connect, share that with you, and then you're able to just, digest that information. So that's good. Speaking of which, what other tools, what are some of your go-to tools or technologies that you use, or even resources that you use to, on your day-to-day life?
So I've discovered I learn much better through podcasts. So if I have an expert talking about a topic on a podcast, I'm much more likely to retain that information than reading the same expert's book. I've discovered I don't need a lot of information to understand a topic. So I can take little bits from things and get a lot of use from them. I'm very good at putting lots of things together, which is great for coaching because I can use lots of different modalities. I come across coaches who are like, right, I only use the Enneagram, and that's the way I coach, and this is my coaching style. I have no coaching style. I meet my clients where they're at and what they need. We might come to that with, I tend to work with some neurodivergent people because they all have different needs and different ways that they want to learn. It really made me stop and think about how humans learn. So I investigated how humans learn. I investigated how people receive feedback, whether it's written, whether it's verbal, whether it's trying things so that they get to try it and experience it and then give feedback. So it made me think differently about how best to work with people. Has been super helpful in my work, and then helpful coaching the founders and executives that I work with to coach their teams and to teach their teams. So I think primarily is just switching the way that I learn. I learn a lot from Reddit. So when I'm learning in a reading format, I learn better when I'm reading a forum and people are explaining the thing that we've just read. That's super helpful to me. So I think that explanation model of learning is very helpful to me when someone's on a podcast, getting asked questions and going kind of into either more detail or just saying it in a different way that my brain retains it, audio books. So it's changed the way that I learn and changed the way that I absorb information. I used to give myself a really hard time because I'd get really interested in these books, fascinating subjects. I'd get halfway through a book and I just couldn't read it anymore. I'd just get stuck and struggle. So learning that I can use podcasts and audiobooks and forums to learn changed learning for me.
Great. I use YouTube a lot as well.
Yes.
In
Yeah,
addition to
yeah.
all those, that's my go-to for any new topics. I go through that. Then podcast if I'm traveling, that's why I go.
Yeah.
So certainly can relate to all of this. Do you use any tools like or apps like Speechify or any of the others in the market to help?
No, I've not heard of that.
Okay. It's a, you could scan a document and then it reads out loud for you. So
Oh,
anything
wow.
that, yeah, and they have also a Chrome extension, so you could,
Okay.
just plug it out. And there's others, Read Out Loud as well. That's a Chrome plugin that I use that has been helpful at work. Whenever, if it's an Outlook product, right, or Microsoft product, there's Read Out Loud capability. So that has been very
Okay. I've just
helpful.
taken notes of those.
um, Good. So I guess the one question before we go into your coaching side of your life and business. I know a lot of adults or individuals, I'll say, know that they might be dyslexic or they might be different, right? And but there's that hesitation to actually go take that assessment, right? Um, if you could just share some words of advice and encouragement, and like some perspective as to why they should go down that journey and what they will uncover at the end.
And I get it, right? There's a stigma both societally and self. I didn't necessarily wanted a diagnosis like this because then what does it mean about me? Am I broken? Am I wrong? And through my journey of discovering about dyslexia, it also helped me understand the benefits of the way that my brain works. I'm able to absorb a lot of information and then come up with very simple solutions from a lot of information. So I remember I've been in men's groups since I was in my early 20s. And most of the guys in the groups were in their late 30s, 40s, and 50s. They were kind of more middle-aged men that were coming to this group because they were trying to find some fulfillment in their life. I was the youngest guy in the group. Whenever there was a discussion, we were discussing something about how the group should work, or there was disagreement, everybody would look at me for the answer. So I would absorb all of this stuff. I'd listen to all the discussion and I'd be, this is what I'm hearing. Here's where I think we should go. And I found that way of absorbing information and then being able to distill it down and be very clear about what I'd heard and what seemed to be the right path very easy for me. And I didn't know that that was more difficult for other people. That was just, oh, I don't understand why that isn't easy. And I think that's part of my dyslexia and the way that I absorb information. Understanding that you are neurodivergent can, as we've already discussed today, allow you to go and seek some tools that will help you. It's okay that I use Grammarly. And Grammarly sends me an email every week telling me about my usage. I'm usually in the top 10 or 15% of Grammarly users for productivity. I'm writing a lot now. I'm usually in the top 5% of Grammarly users in vocabulary. I like words. I love words. I like using interesting words. And I'm usually in the top sorry, I'm usually in the bottom 30% for accuracy. So there's this massive disparity. And every time I get the email, it makes me chuckle. And it also makes me thankful that tools like this exist that allow me to get my message out to people in a way that's digestible and usable for them, because I have these tools that allow me to speak more clearly to everybody. So what a wonderful thing. So again, if you are somebody where communication is part of your life, written or verbal, having these tools can really help you. And once you know, right, okay, I am dyslexic or I have ADHD, once you know these things, it's easier for you to understand how you show up in the world. My wife has ADHD. And at the beginning of our relationship, I would be so frustrated that she couldn't put the lid on the toothpaste or she couldn't close the doors in the cabinet. I remember one particular, sorry, the cabinet doors in the kitchen. I remember one particular time, like walking into the kitchen in our old house, and it was quite small, smacking my head on the door and just losing it. Like, why can you not close these doors? Now, understanding how her brain works and that her brain is thinking about multiple things all of the time, and she's on to the next thing and she's forgotten the thing that she's doing, it gives me a lot more grace for her. And I think that's how I feel about my dyslexia. Understanding that my brain works differently gives me more grace, so I'm not giving myself such a hard time, and also allows me to explain that to other people so that they can give me more grace. If I mispronounce their name, they don't think I'm being sloppy or lazy or don't care. They understand that's just my brain works a little bit differently. So I think it allows me to have more grace. It allows me to invite other people in and understand me better, and therefore they give me more grace. So if
I
you're sitting there, you know,
yeah.
thinking, am I dyslexic? Go find out. And then you can use many of the tools that we've already spoken about today and find more that will help you.
Well said. And I bet the relationship and the level of understanding amongst you and your wife has increased as well, just
Absolutely.
by going through this. And I like that you used the word grace. That's something that I do. I always say like grace is the right way to go about this. Especially, you know, we'll get to this, but as you're coaching entrepreneurs who are leaders of leaders, right? And they also would have team members that are may have some form of neurodiversity or neurodivergence, right? So grace always comes to mind for me, right? Because you don't know what their path is, you don't know what they're going through it. So I always say that even when I'm talking to my team, right? Grace is the first thing that comes to me. I'm glad you said that. All right, so let's transition to your coaching career, and also just curious about what common traits have you seen, right, amongst your clients that who have identified as being a neurodivergence, right? If you could either go, it's a broad question, I get it. It could be dyslexic or just neurodivergence itself, whichever it is. Just your perspective on that.
I'm going to sidestep that slightly and instead answer the common traits I see with my clients, because I think that might be a little bit more helpful. And because I think some of them are neurodivergent without being tested or quantified. My typical client is very, very smart to the point that you would describe them as brilliant, and struggles understanding that other people don't think the same way that they do. And this is my journey too. I would get frustrated that people couldn't see things that seem so frankly blindingly obvious to me. It'd be like, here's all the information here, 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 and here that ties all this together. How can you not see this? And other people didn't. And I would think it was an intelligence thing, and I would be frankly patronizing, and you're stupid, you can't see this. And now I think of it more as it's just the way that my brain pieces things together. It's not necessarily more intelligent, less intelligent. It's just the way that my brain picks up information and then manages to tie it all together. And it's a trait that I tend to see with the founders that I work with. They tend to be able to take information, lots of information, and come up with beautiful, elegant, simple answers, or they see opportunities that other people don't see. And then a lot of my work is helping them not get frustrated, or helping them get past their frustration when other people can't see the world in the same way that they see the world. And they judge that typically as a lack of interest, or laziness, or a failure on the other people, rather than thinking, oh, I'm different. and I see the world differently. And that's why that's why not everybody becomes a founder. There's certain makeup to being a founder, being a visionary. There is a bravery element to it. There is an insightful element to it. And we don't all have those gifts. However, a company needs to be made of many different people who have many different types of gifts. Sometimes you need people just very, very good executionist operators that are able to do repetitive things very, very well to a high standard without getting bored, without stopping halfway to go and do something that they think is more interesting. Which can often be the issue with founders, that they jump around and flit around and get themselves stuck into a bunch of different things instead of completing one thing, or to make sure something is done really well rather than jumping on to the next thing. So I don't want to necessarily label most of the people I work with as neurodivergent. However, I see this similarity of the way that they look at the world and then how it impacts their relationships. And that is something that I help them with, is getting them aware of how it's impacting their relationships and then allowing them to have a different way of being instead, that is more like a coach than a parent, that is more kind and graceful, as we've already spoken about, and that allows them to empower those people that work with them and get the best out of them, so that those people, feel empowered, enjoy what they're doing, and don't feel like they're lesser than or stupid or not smart enough.
Oh, that's good. Lee, is there a particular example that you could share on how you went about coaching a client, or you could just provide something that's not non-identifiable, right? But general, how you would go about, okay, a client is X, how would you go about coaching them so you get the best out of them?
Everybody's different. How I like to think of coaching is we identify where you are now. So, what is the skill set that you have that you bring into the table? Do we need to do some teaching or upskilling there for where you want to get to? What is the emotional toolkit that you have? What is your understanding of yourself, your understanding of the impact that you have in the way that you lead, understanding how other people relate to you? And then lastly, and this is probably the most important work, and this is what sets what I do apart from, say, like a consultant who will come in and tell you how to improve your business. We work on what is the life experience that you're bringing to adulthood from your family system. So we're all born with genetic personality traits. And if you've got kids and your kids have a similar upbringing, yet they're completely different, it's because they have genetically different personality traits. Then the world and your family system and your school system and your friendship system and the country that you're in, all of that shapes us. And we respond to the way people react to us. So you might be a very curious kid or a very energetic kid. Let's take a really energetic kid. And you've got loads of energy and you're bouncing around and you're doing all of these things. And you might have a parent that encourages that and says, well, go try this and go try that, and feeds that. Or you might have a parent who says, whoa, you're too much. Slow down, calm down. So the message you hear is, I'm too much. My full expression of self is too much for other people. And you take that into adulthood, and then you're trying to fight against who you are and who you think you should be. And that has an impact on the way that you can behave. So I help people uncover that, right? This is who you are at your core. These are some of what we call the adaptive mechanisms that you've taken on board to fit into your family system. You're not in it now. You're not in that family system as an adult. You're out in the world, and the world is reacting differently to you, and you get to choose how you're going to be. We identify those adaptive mechanisms. It gives people more choice. Do you want to still behave like that, or do you want to behave differently? And also for them to identify when they start to behave like that. And we tend to take on our adaptive mechanisms the more stressed we are. So, working with founders stressed a lot of the time, they're often living in these adaptive mechanisms rather than their more authentic self. And it can lead to confrontation, it can lead to distrust, it can lead to people feeling like they're inauthentic. So we peel that back and then give them the toolkit, the understanding, the self-awareness to lean more and more into their authentic self, which makes life much more fulfilling for them.
Oh, I've never heard someone say that perspective. I could see how that informs someone's path and also their behaviors. And also it's easily relatable. Like it's just memories come back. As you were talking about, the memories were playing on the back end for me, you know? So I could see that. Never have I heard that before. So thank you for sharing that. I know we have only a few minutes left, so I'll ask maybe one more question and then we'll go towards wrap up. In general, you know, you're coaching leaders, you're coaching founders that are going through different stages in their company. Some might be first-time founders, some might be, you know, seasoned founders. How do you go about making sure the founders really understand kind of the landscape they're in navigating in terms of, you know, managing a team, growing a company, and then you know, also dealing with family life? There, you know, I'm a father of three, right? You're going through all of that. What are some of, I guess, one or two words of advice or tips that you usually go to give these individuals as they're growing a company?
Yeah, wow, that's a big question. I think the first thing is I use examples from my own life and from the life of other clients so that they understand that they're not strange, weird, alone. Often founders think, I'm the only person going through this. I'm the only person suffering this much. I'm the only person this stressed. I'm the only person who's struggling. Because they look at other founders who might be on a podcast or posting on social media, and we see the highlight reel, right? Most people aren't saying, yeah, I nearly lost my company, or I nearly got divorced from my partner, or maybe I did get divorced from my partner because I got so stressful, or I neglected them, or I neglected my children. People don't usually want to share that, at least publicly, because they're embarrassed and they feel shame for it. So reminding them that what they're going through is normal is a big part of it. Just, hey, what you're experiencing is normal. Then looking at things like balance. So, you know, often you'll hear people say, oh, you should have balance in your life. I don't particularly agree with that term. What I think is you should be looking for ways to be aware of where you're investing your time and does this serve me right now? Is this serve me in the long term? And then there's seasons. There's seasons when, especially as a founder at the beginning of your journey, you're going to be spending a lot of time working on what you're doing. And that means some other things need to take a backseat, and you have to decide how much of a backseat works. And you might negotiate that with your romantic partner, for example, like, right, how much of this, how much can I give to this business? How much can I give to our relationship? How much can I give to making sure that I'm doing some kind of physical activity to be healthy? How am I making sure that I'm sleeping enough to be healthy? It's interesting, a crossover between my athletes that I used to coach and the founders that I work with. I'm often slowing them all down. So the athletes, it would be, you don't need to do so much training. You're training too hard, or you need to be doing more rest, or we're not going to do that extra set. You've done for the day. And it's the same thing with my founders. They're very smart and they want to do it all. They look at people and they think everybody's doing it all. I need to do it all. And they're looking at highly, highly successful people, and that's who they're comparing themselves to, because they are highly successful people. The people that I work with typically have been through a Series B or C fundraising. They have a product or service that is doing well. Their business is expanding rapidly, and I am helping them cope with that emotionally, learn how to lead and teach and run an organization while developing their leadership team and helping everybody work with each other. I usually coach not just the founder, but other people in the executive team on how to work with each other, not just individually, but right, how do you best work with each other? And I do group sessions with them where they get the opportunity to clear the air, right? You know, this is upsetting me, or I need to speak to you about this in a way that feels safe and supportive. I think really it's just helping people understand they're having a normal human experience. They're not alone. And also reflecting to them the gain areas that they have. So here's how you're walking through the world right now, and seeing how would you like to walk through the world instead, and getting them to be in charge of their life. So instead of the world kind of happening to them, they get to choose how the world happens. They are making the choices. As you said, they're breaking out of those old patterns and memories of the past, and they're creating literally new neural pathways of different ways of responding in the same situation. And from there, they just have a lot more choice. How do I want to show up in the world? How do I want to show up in my relationships? what is important to me, what can I let go of, so that they can really find some fulfillment and creating, balance, but not this image that we have of balance of everything has to be equal. That's not the way it works. It's knowing when to turn certain sections of your life on and then when to diminish them a bit.
Well said, and this was extremely helpful. So Lee, in conclusion, first of all, I thoroughly enjoyed the session, and it was almost like a mini coaching call for me personally. So thank you for that. You also validated a few things that I've, gone through, questioned myself. So it was really helpful. So before we wrap up, how can people find you? And share a little bit about your work. And also, if you have any closing thoughts, we'll take it as well.
Yeah, thank you. So to find me, pretty simple, Lee Povey, Leepovey. I have an unreasonably unusual name, so you'll find me on all the social medias with that handle pretty easily. I have a group I would love your listeners to join, if they are founders or executives or leaders in a company, called The Founders Catalyst. It's on LinkedIn. It is a free group for founders, high achievers, leaders, and executives at startups. And it's a space for you to come and meet other people, to network, and to ask me and my colleague, Steve Meller, another coach, any questions you might have. We do some free coaching in the group. We also have a podcast that goes with the group that we just launched this week. So look out for that on all the platforms, the Founders Catalyst. And then lastly, we have a monthly Zoom call where you can come and get free coaching. And this is my way of giving back. As I just said, a lot of founders feel alone. I felt alone. I don't know if you felt that too, but kind of that weirdness of nobody else understands what I'm going through. And your friends and family, they care, but they can't. If you've not been a founder, you don't really know what it feels like to be a founder, to take that risk of creating your own thing, whether it be financially or just even egotistically, the risk of this could fail and I'm going to look stupid. So I want to get as many founders together as possible so that we can enjoy that experience. And then off the back of it, I'm going to be running a 6-month intensive where we'll go together as a group and go really deep. And that will finish with a retreat in Joshua Tree, because I've done those numerous times myself and in men's groups, and getting together in nature can be super powerful. And I want to have an impact on this world, Kushi. I really want to, I want to help founders do brilliant things that helps humanity. So I work with founders that are doing something that makes a difference in this world. That's the people that I really particularly like working with. And I see a better future for us. I don't think things have to stay as they are. I don't think people have to stay disappointed or angry. There's so many avenues to change your life.
Absolutely. Lee, again, thank you for being on. We'll make sure that all those are in our show notes. We'll link to the community as well. And I'm sure our community will be more than interested and they'll be participating in that. So again, thank you for being on, Lee.
Thank you, Kushi. Great to meet you, mate.
Cheers.